Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, and this video is going to be a follow-up to another video I made about a week or so ago, where I called AMD's new flagship graphics card a failure for the high-end gaming and enthusiast market. And I still stand by all the things I said in that video. That was a video where a lot of people disagreed with me on some of the things I said, and I was also accused of being a no video shill or that Intel had paid me to make that video. Some of the most absurd things I've ever heard. That video also got taken out of context because although I said that I was disappointed with its gaming performance, there were still a bunch of people saying I was wrong for calling it a failure since its performance in professional applications was great. Not once did I say it was bad for that market. In fact, I fully made it clear that I believe the Vega architecture was designed for the professional segment, with gaming being a side quest. But people apparently can't read titles of a video and didn't thoroughly listen before they went full keyboard warrior mode in the comment section. Anyways, moving on from that, let me just share to you guys why I've always had such a great interest in AMD hardware. In 2012, after my 8800 GT died, I decided to look for a graphics card that could replace it for the time being. I was short on cash, so I was looking for a graphics card that would offer me great value for my dollar. AMD has always been known for fulfilling that requirement, so the card I picked up was the Sapphire Radeon HD 7770, which served me quite well. It was the first time I bought an AMD graphics card, and first time buying any AMD hardware. I was really happy with its performance, and I was satisfied with it because it didn't leave a hole in my wallet or anything like that. In late 2013, I finally got a 1080p monitor and also had built a fairly budget PC at the time to allow me to drive that monitor. That PC consisted of an FX 6300 and an R9 270X. Again, I went with an AMD build since I was impressed with its price to performance of the HD 7770, and so their hardware appealed to me. I didn't really feel the need to go all out on the gaming PC at the time, as I was doing most of my gaming on my 360 and PS3, as that's where most of my friends were playing, and the other half of the gaming I was doing was on my PC. I was also mostly just playing games like League of Legends and CSGO, games that you can pretty much run on any hardware these days. But then when the PS4 and Xbox One came out, they didn't really appeal to me, and it was since then I pretty much spent all of my time gaming on a PC. Moving forward, I bought the R9 390 because I needed something with more performance than my R9 270X, because I started to play games that were a lot more demanding. The reason why I went with an R9 390 over the GTX 970 was because, again, I felt like I was getting better value for my money. Hardware-wise, it was better, and overall performance was better as well. It was also more flexible at 1440p due to having a wider memory bus and having more memory. And another reason why I bought the card was because it was simply cheaper. That card served me well. It was great for 1080p gaming and could handle some games at 1440p as well. Because of my positive experiences with AMD's graphics cards, I was very heavily leaning towards my next upgrade being an AMD GPU. I mean, I'm all for trying new hardware, and at the time, the reason why I didn't take Nvidia into consideration wasn't because I disliked their cards or anything like that. But when you've been buying products from one brand for so long and you've had positive experiences with them, you sometimes just tend to stick with what's been working for you. I mean, for the past 3 builds, I've been using Gigabyte motherboards because I've had positive experiences with their product. This doesn't mean that I'm promoting brand loyalty here. If your product doesn't deliver, I'm not going to buy it anymore just because your name is slapped on it. I like AMD, but I'm not going to give them the best friend forever treatment. I'm simply going to give my money to the company that has the performance, that has the features that I want. Since Nvidia released the GTX 1080, showing yet again another drastic leap in performance made for Maxwell, it was quite impressive. That was the level of performance I wanted to upgrade to at the time, as I was still using my 390. AMD with Polaris targeted the mainstream and lower end users with cards such as the 480 and RX 470, and they did do a great job at that. Before the mining boom happened, those Polaris cards, especially the 470 in my opinion, offered great value for your money. Again, continuing that trend. But obviously for guys like myself who already had a 390, a 290X or a Fury, we were supposed to keep waiting or go for Nvidia. I decided to keep waiting because back when Pascal initially launched, the MSRP was higher than it is today for the 1080, and in Canada, with our dollar being lower, it wasn't helping as 1080s were in the $900 to $1,000 range, which I thought was a heck of a lot of money for a graphics card based on the GP104 chip. So I decided to keep waiting because I was thinking and hoping that AMD would offer something almost as powerful and be competitive at a lower price point, like they've done in the past. I even bought a FreeSync 1440p 144Hz monitor in my plan to wait for Vega. Looking at the roadmap from the Radeon Technologies group, it looked like Vega was supposed to arrive in Q1 2017. At the New Horizon event in December last year, AMD showed off a PC with a Ryzen CPU and a Vega graphics card playing Star Wars Battlefront at 4K, achieving 60 FPS. Lisa Su stated that a gamer's dream PC of 2017 will be a system with a Ryzen CPU and a Vega graphics card. Later on, in December 26, 2016, the official Radeon Twitter account posted this tweet: "New year, new architecture," with a picture showing someone entering into the light away from the darkness. And on January 1st, they teased a new website with a mysterious countdown leading up to January 5th, 2017, the opening day for CES 2017. This was when the hype train really started to get rolling for Vega, because by the way they were hyping it up, it looked like they were going to unveil something big around this time, as if they were preparing for a launch. A lot of people were expecting there to be a live stream, along with a release or some kind of unveiling of hardware. But when the countdown was over, all we got was the infamous Poor Volta trailer and some videos posted on AMD's channel showcasing some features embedded in Vega's architecture. We also got one video where they showed off the flagship Vega graphics card playing Doom at 4K ultra settings using the Vulkan API. And 7 months later, after the 1080's release, their flagship Vega graphics card was performing around the same level. Some people were happy with this, some were disappointed. I wasn't too sure what to think of it at the time. I wasn't impressed, that's for sure. Because if it was performing around a GTX 1080 in Doom running on Vulkan, then it's going to perform worse in other DX11 titles. I didn't want to believe that this was the best they had to offer, and my skepticism was because of them stating it was only running on modified VG drivers, or that it was a downclocked engineering sample. But we know from the past that AMD does not sandbag, and if this really was the best Vega had to offer, then it better look appealing in some other way. Whether it was price or power efficiency, I don't know. A month or so later, AMD had released Ryzen, showing competitive performance against Intel, and bringing high core count CPUs to the masses. Before Ryzen, I guess I could say majority of my attention was on Vega, mostly because I had a 6600K which was doing fine for gaming. Upgrading my CPU was more of a thought in the back of my mind as opposed to a GPU upgrade. But when I saw an opportunity to be able to buy an 8-core 16-thread CPU for less than half the price of a 6900K, which would help with things like video editing and rendering, I took it. Once GDC came, AMD held another conference which was mostly catered toward developers. Here they showed off some cool features that Vega comes with, such as their high bandwidth cache, which helps in VRAM limited situations. Again, stuff that would be intriguing to developers, but nothing really exciting for the mainstream consumers. But Raja Koduri did say to the audience that at the end of the show, he's going to reveal something big. And what we got was...
So, Vega, it's going to be called Vega. It's not a 590, it's not a 490. The gaming GPU is going to be called Radeon RX Vega. That's so cool.
So we learned that Vega is, well, Vega. That was the big surprise. Then the same day later, Nvidia gave another massive blow to AMD, unveiling the GTX 1080 Ti, a graphics card that performs 25 to 30% better than their previous gaming flagship graphics card in the same generation. Now, a lot of people thought that since there was no high-end competition from AMD, they would simply price the 1080 Ti between the 1080 and Titan X Pascal, probably for the price of $799 or $850. But instead, they reduced the price of the 1080 to $499, and the Ti was priced at $699, a surprising move from Nvidia, and really trying to make the statement that this is the way to go for the best gaming experience. And for a graphics card bringing that much performance to the table, I was impressed and thought it was a fair price this time around. From this point, AMD went basically silent. On April 18th, we saw them release the Polaris Refresh, which were just the 480 and 470 rebranded into the RX 580 and RX 570. So at this point, I'm basically starting to lose my patience, and was really disappointed that we weren't even given any information about RX Vega. Because at this period, we're nearing almost a point where the 1080 and 1070 had been out for a whole year, and AMD are still absent in the high end? Back in February, I had to RMA my R9 390, and in return, I got a GTX 1070 from MSI, and if it wasn't for that, I probably would have grabbed a GTX 1080 after the price cuts. So therefore, I was able to bear the wait a little bit longer. When they held their conference at Computex, I found it to be quite lackluster compared to their conference from 2016, where they did the whole Polaris launch. Here we learned that AMD was going to release Vega Frontier Edition, a card aimed towards content creators and the professional segment on June 27th, while gamers will have to wait until July 30th. It was at this point where I basically drew the line and a few days later picked up a GTX 1080 Ti. The Vega Frontier Edition was also a very bizarre launch, as AMD didn't even bother to sample out cards to reviewers. Now, while most people focused on its productivity performance, gaming performance was also tested, and it was performing around a GTX 1080. Now, people were quick to disregard these results because it's not a gaming card, and drivers will magically make it significantly better. AMD then releases the Vega 64 and 56, and you guys know what happened from there. It turned out Vega FE's gaming performance was indicative of RX Vega's gaming performance. This was obvious because it's the same chip, it's the same silicon. If you thought RX Vega was going to be way faster than the Frontier Edition, you were basically setting yourself up for disappointment. People complained that I shouldn't have judged RX Vega because third-party reviews weren't out. Well, they are now, and basically they line up with what I said in that video. And you guys can look at benchmarks from wherever you're interested from, but the results for the most part showed the Vega 64 being a 1080 competitor, while Vega 56 competing against the 1070, but majority of the time being between the 1070 and 1080. And keep in mind, for fairness, the reviewers used Founder Edition cards. Had they used aftermarket cards with better cooling, higher boost clocks, the results would have looked more underwhelming. And that's the reality that most people have to face. Because most people, when shopping for a graphics card, aren't going to just take into account how a reference card performs against another reference card, but how it performs against all cards on the market, reference or custom cooled. Because that is what is in front of you at the time. Custom cooled RX Vega cards won't be arriving for another month or so you can continue to keep playing that waiting game, but I think it's a waste of time. But there were some interesting things I noted as well. ComputerBase later posted an update to the review where they downclocked the Vega 64 and Vega 56 to the same operating frequencies as the Fury X, AMD's flagship from 2 years ago. And what we're seeing here is that the Vega 56 and Fury X are performing identically. In Tech Power-Up's review in Sniper Elite 4 at UHD resolution, we see the Vega 56 and Fury X performing identically. It's like, I'm just scratching my head and thinking what the hell is going on here. AMD even pointed out that the Vega architecture was designed for higher clock speeds and higher IPC. But we're not seeing that here. My main issues with these cards is their timing. They're just offering way too little for too late, and their prices are not justified. What we have on our hands is the flagship Vega 64, which is performing like a GTX 1080, consuming a lot more power, while being 14-15 months late to the market. Now, I'm not saying that GTX 1080 performance is bad, not at all. That level of performance is fantastic for high refresh rate gaming at 1080p. It's great for 1440p, and it's capable in quite a few games at 4K, being able to deliver a 60 FPS experience. However, a card that fulfills all that has already been out for a year. So if you release a product that's performing about the same in some cases, then at least have a reasonable price tag to go along with it. And if you guys thought that the whole situation couldn't get any worse, after the launch day we find out that the MSRP of the cards was limited. Gamers Nexus posted an article stating multiple sources confirmed from different companies that work with AMD. The MSRP AMD stated was for launch only, to make it look more favorable. Now all of a sudden, the Vega 64 is retailing for $599 to $699, while the liquid-cooled version is $700 to $800. This is GTX 1080 Ti territory for GTX 1080 performance, while running hotter, consuming more power. And this will most likely be the same case for the Vega 56 graphics card. Here in Canada, the Vega liquid-cooled version is retailing for $1,000, while the regular air-cooled version is around the mid-$800 range. Again, this is GTX 1080 Ti territory. I really don't see why anyone should buy this card over the GTX 1080 Ti, which performs better and consumes less power. This problem is also much more worse in other countries. It just boggles my mind because aftermarket 1080s can be found for much lower. A nice bait and switch pulled by the Radeon Technologies group there, if you ask me. This sort of stuff is just straight up deceptive and despicable. They're not only screwing over the consumers, but they've also screwed over the reviewers who put in their hard work to review the cards for them, only to find out later their reviews look flawed, because their recommendations were based upon the launch MSRP, and they didn't have a clue about the price increases. It's not their fault. But if someone a month or so later, who didn't have knowledge about this, watched those reviews, then later went out to buy that product, well, they'll be thinking that guy sold me a pack of lies, when it really wasn't. These Radeon packs, they're nothing but a bunch of cash grabs, only to make the product look a little more appealing. Prey has been known to go on sale for 30 bucks or so. Even parts, you're better off buying from independent sales. Majority of the people don't care about those extra discounts, because what if you just want to buy the card itself? These aren't free products that you're getting with the card. These are products that are included in the combo. You're getting them for a cheaper price, for a discount. When you go to a fast food restaurant and you buy a combo with a drink, you're paying for that drink. You're not getting it for free, just like how you're not getting these games for free. Even bringing FreeSync and G-Sync into the equation doesn't help. We're focusing on the GPUs here. People act like this is a staple piece of technology that is a must-have, where you can't enjoy an AMD card if you don't have FreeSync, or that you can't enjoy an NVIDIA graphics card without G-Sync. No, it doesn't work like that. I'm speaking from experience here as well. I gave up FreeSync and I don't miss it at all, because the GTX 1080 Ti is already pushing out such a high frame rate where it's already smooth enough. I also felt the same way when I had received my GTX 1070. The experience was completely fine, it was completely playable. Just because you have a FreeSync monitor doesn't mean that you're locked into Radeon only hardware now. Fine wine is another thing that people shouldn't be using as a selling point because it's bullshit. It's just a lame excuse for poor drivers. I also find it dumb that people will bring up cards that were released from 4 or 5 years ago and say stuff like, look, a 7870 is now performing better than a GTX 680. Sorry, but that's not how you sell a product. You don't tell your customers that, hey, we have this product here, it performs okay now, there's some issues with it, there are some features disabled, but don't worry, we'll enable those features sometime in the future, and it will perform much better. Just wait on that. How long will you have to wait? Well, we don't know either. No! You sell your product with amazing drivers from day one. You guys remember back when the 1060 came out a month later and stole the 480's thunder? But then if I remember correctly, the Relive drivers seemed to give the 480 a much needed boost in performance. But what do you guys think would have happened if the 480 was released with those drivers on day one? It would have looked way more appealing than it did initially. Going back to what I said earlier, there's no point in bragging about how older high-end AMD cards are now beating their NVIDIA counterparts, because guess what? Now you can get budget graphics cards which perform about the same, if not better. Maybe Vega will catch up to a 1080 Ti a year or two down the road, but when that happens, it won't matter because there will be more power efficient and cheaper cards out by the time that happens, making it completely negligible. On launch day, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang came out and basically said, don't expect next generation Volta gaming GPUs anytime soon, and it makes sense. But hearing that pissed me off because I'm a fan of market competition. It makes complete sense as to why they're doing it though. From a business standpoint, that's the smarter decision. There's absolutely no reason to push out graphics cards when your current lineup is doing just fine. There's no point in wasting time, money, and R&D when there's barely any market competition. You're only going to end up hurting yourself and cannibalize your products when they're selling just fine and in fact look more appealing now. Well, that's just awkward, when AMD makes NVIDIA graphics cards look more appealing. With Ryzen, AMD forced Intel to rush out Skylake X. They're even releasing Coffee Lake in the next few days when Kaby Lake has only been on the desktop market for 8 months. This is the result of competition. But when your competitors say they're not even going to bother, then what do you think that's the result of? This is also scary because in the future, NVIDIA will be basically doing whatever they want. In fact, they've already been doing whatever the hell they want. Charging whatever they can because they know there really isn't a better alternative. They're a corporation that will take full advantage of the situation. That's just the way it works. This whole launch has just been a complete and utter shit show. They've handled their marketing very poorly, delivered a product that isn't even performing enough to justify its pricing, with price hikes and delaying launch to apparently make sure it was available, but clearly it wasn't. A few days ago, I read that they released a driver to optimize performance for blockchain compute workloads. This driver is not intended for graphics or gaming workloads. This right here pretty much speaks for itself. This whole wait for Vega journey has been an interesting learning experience. The most important being, don't wait for any hardware releases unless you know for sure 100% have crystal clear information about how some next generation hardware is going to perform. The next being that no corporation out there is your friend. Vote with your wallet. You should be buying products that give you good value for your money. Don't just buy something because it has your favorite brand's label on it. You don't owe them anything, and you're just screwing the market by being a fanboy like that. I had a whole history with AMD graphics cards, but when I saw they weren't going to fulfill the requirements that I needed, no problem, I got myself a product from another brand that does just that. Well guys, leave your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let me know whether you disagree or agree. I'm interested in your responses. I want to know your thoughts on the whole RX Vega situation. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.